Welcome to my presentation. Today I will be looking at the effectiveness of prisons as a form of punishment and looking at alternative forms of punishment and whether they are more effective than prisons. To begin with, Scott and Flynn in 2014 defined a punishment as an act set out by the government that intentionally inflicts pain and suffering on an individual who, in response to an illegal act that they have committed. Around the world, these punishments may vary, but within England and Wales, the most commonly used ones are community service, fines, electric tagging, and prison sentences. Today, this discussion will mainly focus on prisons, and Folcott in 2012 defined a prison as a building in which people are legally held as a punishment for crimes such as murder, theft, robbery, terrorism, and many petty crimes. There are many purposes of prisons, and I looked at research around them. The four main purposes are reformation, rehabilitation, deterrence, and protecting society. There's always a question surrounding prisons, whether they work, whether we should carry on using them, and Party in 2009 looked at all the four different reasons. So to begin with is retribution. Retribution, defined by Hampton in 1991, stated that it is inflicting pain and punishment on an individual as vengeance for a criminal act. Retribution looked at how the punishment for an individual should be in proportion with the pain and suffering they cause to society or any individual. And secondly is incapacitation. Zimmering and Hawkins defined it as a form of punishment such as a prison sentence in order to deprive the individual of any ability and therefore positively preventing them from recommitting. It could be argued that incapacitation is in place to take a dangerous individual out of society, therefore protecting themselves and other people. Thirdly is deterrence. Hawkins in 1969 defined deterrence as discouragement of crime towards society or an individual themselves. The fear of punishment should, if individuals can see what they're going through, should deter them from ever committing a crime, and also deterrence should happen within the individual themselves, inside the criminal, because it should show them that this is what happens when you commit a crime, and therefore if they do ever get out of prison, then they would never want to recommit and go through the form of punishment again. And lastly, rehabilitation. O'Connor and Perryclear in 2002 defined rehabilitation as preventing crime by altering a criminal's mindset and the way they act. So it allows criminals to have their records cleared and to basically have a second chance. So within prisons, there are many classes and places to work, which means they can alter their way of thinking to make them not want to recommit and to make them not a criminal anymore. I discovered many arguments around the effectiveness of prison as a form of punishment, and my personal opinion is that physically, yes, prisons do stop individuals from committing crimes and from causing harm to society because they are locked away from it. They're locked away for a long time, from 3 months to life. And this means that they physically cannot commit another crime unless they do this inside the prison, which would just mean their sentencing would be longer. But however, physically, yes, they stop any harm from society, but mentally, if a person has committed a crime, they usually believe that what they've done is correct, and therefore they think they're correct and they're not going to change because they think everyone else is wrong. And once you have this mindset, going into a prison and being surrounded by other people like you, and maybe even worse, can just cause an individual to become worse. Within a prison, there's no boundaries. There's many gangs and there's a lot of drug usage. So if you're surrounded by that 24/7 and your mindset is already not how it should be, then it's more likely that prisons are encouraging individuals to become worse and not rehabilitating them successfully. Chambliss in 1967 gave his view, and he said that all forms of punishment should continuously change because society is continuously changing, and therefore they should adapt with that. So in order to be offering the best form of punishment, they should be changing. However, he believes that this is not the case, and that the criminal justice system, specifically prisons, are operating inefficiently. Because those who commit the worst crimes, such as murder or terrorism, are punished so severely, but these are the crimes that are less likely to be deterred against. No, sorry, these are the crimes that are most deterrable because they're so large. Whereas individuals who commit petty crimes aren't being punished as severely, and they're the ones that are most likely to be deterrable because they're so small. So if someone who, for example, someone that steals from a shop and gets 3 months in prison, people may look at that and think, if they were going to commit a crime like that, people may look at that and think, oh, it's only 3 months in prison, I can do that easily. Whereas if someone was to murder someone and that's a massive crime which should be deterred against, they're going to get their whole life in prison, but they're not being able to deter people because they're just being locked away their whole life. So Chambliss, again 1967, he believes that petty and less severe crimes should be punished at the same severity as other crimes in order to achieve the greater rates of deterrence, creating a more effective form of punishment. Because if an individual is committing a crime, no matter what the crime, the punishment should be as severe to deter anyone from committing any crime at all, and therefore reducing the rates. After looking at all the ideas around prison, I began to look at an alternative form of punishment, so not using prisons at all. And I mentioned them previously, 3 others such as fines, community servicing and tagging. And a counter argument to this is that alternative forms of punishment may be more effective to reducing crimes and deterring individuals from going against the law, and they show different levels of efficiency. So to begin with our fines, individuals are made to pay fines as a result of their criminal acts sometimes, and these are more likely to be petty crimes. However, for some individuals this could be a greater punishment as they value money a huge amount over their time and life and what they do with it. So an example given was those who commit financial crimes. They may be more inclined to want to go to prison rather than have to pay a large fine because they care about their money more than anything else. Therefore, this could be a reason why fines are more effective, but again, may only be effective for some people and not the population as a whole. Secondly, is community servicing. This is a form of punishment that could be seen as a more effective way, as individuals are highly controlled by powers of authority, which involves more intense and frequently supervised. This is a more one-to-one supervision within society, where an individual can keep themselves away from causing trouble. However, this may not be liked by many because through research has shown that criminals like to keep themselves to themselves, and if they are being constantly monitored and having to help the community when all they want to do is destroy the community, they're more likely to not want to, and therefore maybe not want to commit the crime. And lastly is electric tagging. Similar to community servicing, it's a very intense way of punishing someone as it's very one-to-one and constantly being watched. It involves strict restrictions as to when they can leave their house, when they can be out in society. They have an electric tag on their ankle that is kept there for however long they've been sentenced to. They have random check-ins, random drug tests, and it may be more effective because of the one-to-one and how restricted and controlled it is. A criminal may find this irritating and therefore thinks to themselves, I don't want to go through that, and they might be more inclined to therefore not commit a crime. So to look at all of this, I concluded that prison does have a strong effect on society as a form of punishment because they are physically locked away, and therefore they're unable to commit the crimes. However, as a favourable form of punishment, which prisons are within many, many societies and cultures, it may not be the most effective at preventing crimes. Becker in 1968 argued that prisons could possibly be the worst form of punishment due to how overcrowded they are, and how when someone enters a prison, you can't choose who your cellmate might be. So I could be in prison for stealing something from a shop, whereas I could be celled up with someone who's a murderer, and therefore it may just encourage this individual to become even worse. Therefore, my personal opinion and through research shows that an alternative form of punishment, such as the community servicing and the electric tagging, is much more effective than prisons. Thank you for listening.